In the annals of maritime history, there are stories of legendary ghost ships, vessels lost to the fury of the sea, but few are as real, as vast, or as profoundly mystifying as the story of the USS Cyclops. This isn't a pirate legend or a folk tale. This is the documented, true story of one of the United States Navy's biggest ships, a behemoth, a black steel, that sailed over the horizon in 1918 with 306 souls on board and vanished forever. She was a titan of her time, but she was not unique. The USS Cyclops was one of 4 identical sister ships in the all built for the same purpose, to be the workhorses of the fleet. Her sisters were the USS Proteus, the USS Nereus, and the USS Jupiter. The fate of these sister ships adds a chilling layer to the mystery. During World War II, both the Proteus and the Nereus, carrying similar heavy or cargoes, also vanished without a trace along similar routes in the Atlantic. This staggering coincidence has led many experts to believe the disappearance wasn't bad luck, but design, a fatal flaw inherent in their very construction. The 4th sister, the Jupiter, had a different fate. She was converted into something revolutionary. The United States' very first aircraft carrier, renamed the USS Langley. Though she served for decades, her luck eventually ran out, and she was sunk by enemy action in 1942. 3 out of 4 sisters lost to the sea. It was as if the class was cursed from the start. Launched in 1910, the Cyclops was a floating factory designed for one crucial purpose: to fuel the fleet, nearly 550 feet long. Her immense hull could swallow over 12,000 tons of coal. Life aboard for the crew was a grueling routine of heat, noise, and coal dust. The rhythmic groan of her powerful engines was the constant, metallic heartbeat of the vessel. In early 1918, with the First World War raging, the Cyclops was tasked with a critical mission that would take her far from her usual duties. She sailed to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where her cavernous holes were filled, not with coal, but with 800 tons of a heavy dark red powder, vital to the war effort. Manganese used to produce steel for munitions and armor. This cargo was notoriously dangerous. If saturated with water, the fine powder could suddenly liquefy, transforming from a stable solid into a thick, unstable slurry that could shift without warning, throwing the entire ship off balance. With this perilous cargo secured, the Cyclops began its long journey home, its destination, the bustling port of Baltimore, Maryland. The final confirmed sighting of the ship was during an unscheduled stop in the West Indies, on the island of Barbados, in early March. The massive ship, a stark piece of industrial engineering, must have looked out of place against the backdrop of turquoise water and tropical palms. On March 4th, 1918, having topped off its supplies, the USS Cyclops weighed anchor, steamed out of port, and was last seen sailing north, a dark silhouette against the setting sun. After that, absolute, impenetrable silence. Days turned into weeks. The ship was long overdue in Baltimore. At first, the Navy wasn't overly concerned. Delays were common. But as this silence stretched on, concern grew into alarm. A massive search operation, one of the largest of its time, was launched. Dozens of ships and early naval aircraft crisscrossed the vast, empty expanse of the Atlantic along the Cyclops' expected route. They spent weeks scanning the waves for any sign of life, any clue at all, a piece of wood, a life preserver, a single spot of oil on the water. They found nothing. It was as if the ocean had simply opened its mouth and swallowed the 550-foot vessel. How could this happen? The investigation immediately faced a wall of silence. No SOS had been received. This led to a storm of theories. The first, and most straightforward, was the fury of nature. The ship had sailed directly into a region known as the graveyard of the Atlantic for its violent and unpredictable weather. It's possible the Cyclops sailed directly into a sudden, vicious storm. Imagine the scene. Towering walls of black water, waves like liquid mountains crashing over the decks, and the groaning protest of stressed metal. A single, monstrous rogue wave could have overwhelmed the vessel in an instant. Then there was the ship itself, and a danger within its own hull. As we know, her sister ships also vanished, carrying heavy, or this points to a catastrophic structural failure. The Cyclops was known to have a single, unreliable engine and a tendency to roll heavily. Imagine the manganese, or saturated by seawater from a wave, suddenly shifting. The sudden transfer of thousands of tons of weight would be unstoppable. The ship would have listed violently, capsizing with terrifying speed before an SOS could even be sent. Its spine snapping in two as it plunged bow first into the abyss. But the world was at war. This led investigators to a more sinister theory. Enemy action. Could a German U-boat have sunk the Cyclops? It was a plausible scenario. However, after the war, German naval archives were meticulously searched. Official records listed every Allied ship sunk by U-boats. The USS Cyclops was not on that list. No U-boat commander ever claimed the kill, a prize that would have been a significant feather in any captain's cap. This forced investigators to look inward at the human element, and specifically at the ship's commander, Captain George W. Worley. Worley was a man shrouded in controversy. Born in Germany as Georg Wichmann, he was an eccentric and reportedly tyrannical man, openly despised by his crew. Naval records are filled with reports of his bizarre and cruel behavior. He was known to walk the decks in a long coat and a bowler hat, often berating his officers in front of the crew. Before the Cyclops' final voyage, formal complaints were so numerous that a board of inquiry was convened to assess his fitness for command. Incredibly, he was kept in his post, given his German birth and his alleged pro-German remarks to other officers. Many believed he was a spy who had deliberately handed the ship over to the enemy. Or perhaps the simmering resentment aboard his ship finally boiled over into a bloody mutiny. Imagine hushed, angry conversations in the dark corners of the mess hall, a chaotic struggle for control that ended in disaster. The truth of Captain Worley's character and actions died with him. With no wreckage and no definitive explanation, the United States Navy was forced to do something it rarely ever does. In its official report, the investigation concluded that the USS Cyclops was lost to causes unknown. The file was closed, but the mystery was just beginning. In the 1950s and 60s, writers like Vincent Gaddis began to chart out a mysterious patch of ocean where disappearances seemed common. The story of the USS Cyclops, with its dramatic vanishing act and massive loss of life, became a crown jewel of this new legend. The Bermuda Triangle. More than a century later, the fate of the USS Cyclops remains one of the most baffling mysteries in naval history. No confirmed piece of the ship has ever been recovered. It rests somewhere on the vast, unexplored floor of the Atlantic Ocean, in a silent, crushing darkness. A ghost ship resting in its final, undiscovered grave. The ocean guards its secrets well, and the story of the Cyclops is one of its most profound. The past is never truly lost. It's just waiting to be exposed. What do you believe happened to this mighty ship? A fatal design flaw, a freak storm, or an act of human betrayal? Let us know your theory in the comments below. And for more deep dives into history's greatest unsolved cases, subscribe to Past Exposed and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss our next investigation.